Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. So over the last little while I've done a couple of pumpkin recipes, a pumpkin cake and a pumpkin slab pie. And one of the questions I got over and over and over again in the comment section was, I don't like pumpkin, can I use sweet potato? And my answer is yes. So this is boiled sweet potato. I took one sweet potato, boiled it, and then just mashed it up with a fork. And you can use pretty much sweet potato and squash or pumpkin equally, 1-to-1, just sub one for the other. It doesn't really matter. They have a similar texture and a similar moisture content. So it's very easy to sub one for the other. And so today we're going to make a little sweet potato cake. So I've got the butter in the stand mixer and it's creaming. And I'm going to add in some white sugar and cream those together. I wish you could be here with me in the kitchen. I have a braised beef dish going in the oven. It's beef, like really like horrible, tough cuts of beef, braised in a bottle of white wine with a couple of shallots and a hot pepper, and a whole lot of black pepper and a little bit of salt. And that's it. And it is going to be one of the most flavorful dishes that you can imagine. And the beef, no matter that it's a really tough cut of beef, is going to be super soft. Check that video out. I don't know what the recipe's called. It's just something my mom used to make. And it doesn't have any real name, but I will link to it below down in the description. So the butter and the sugar is creamed together, and I'm going to add the eggs one at a time. This is your standard cake mix. There's really not a whole lot going on here that isn't standard cake. We've got some spicing to go in with the flour, but the method is pretty much the same as any other cake we've ever made. So the second egg goes in now. We'll leave the mixer on. We'll get that egg and the butter and the sugar all emulsified together. And I'll move on to the flour. So in the flour, I'm going to add salt. This is mace. I've got cinnamon, ginger, cloves. This is baking powder. And I'm going to grate in some nutmeg. Okay, and we'll just give that a little bit of a mix. You don't have to go wild with mixing them together. Just a little bit. And of course, I could always use a bigger bowl. Now, I'm going to put in, first a little bit of vanilla. Let's put the vanilla in first so I don't forget it. And then the sweet potato. And we'll get that mixture all together. The sweet potato reacts the same way as pumpkin does when you put it in. The mixture sort of breaks a little bit and it looks not terribly appetizing, but it's okay. Now, we need about a half a cup of milk. And we add a little bit of the milk and a little bit of the flour, and you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I'm going to start with the flour, though. Even though I said start with the milk, I'm going to start with the flour. So, a couple scoops of flour. Let it mix in almost all the way. And then a little bit of milk. And just go back and forth, back and forth. Now, the last ingredient I'm going to put in are some nuts. I've got a 9x9 that I've buttered and put parchment sling in the bottom. Pretty standard stuff. I'm going to put in some pecans. I'm going to use pecans because a couple of weeks ago I went to the grocery store to buy a bag of pecans to do a bunch of holiday baking. Pecans are my favorite nut for cakes and things like that. And I was absolutely shocked at the price of pecans. So I've been using them sparingly, but at the same time I'm trying to use them up. I don't want them to get rancid and go to waste in the back of the cupboard. I don't want to forget about them. So I'm going to put them in. We are, I'm shooting this in September 2022, we are at sort of a crossroads in the economy where I think a lot of us are taking a hard look at some items at the grocery store. I can't wrap my head around what certain things cost. I mean, the cost of the pecans was through the roof, and yet in the produce section, there were watermelons from Mexico that were 50 cents each. And right beside that was a giant bin of pineapples that came all the way from the Philippines, and they were 75 cents each. I don't get where the pricing is right now. I really don't get where the pricing is right now. So I guess where I'm going with that is, even though this recipe calls for pecans, you could leave them out completely. Don't use them if they're too expensive. Maybe this is the year that I learned to love English walnuts because they are a more affordable option. Peanuts would be great in here. Whatever nut happens to be on sale this week at your grocery store would be great in here. I think you just need to, as someone who's cooking for your family, figure out what some substitutions are and what works with your budget. When you look at a recipe, if there's an ingredient like pine nuts, there's so many recipes that have pine nuts, and pine nuts are just crazy expensive. They're great, but you could probably leave them out of a lot of recipes, and I think that, you know, this is the same sort of thing. So I'm just going to smooth the top. The oven inside my home kitchen is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Can't use the oven in the studio because it has this braised beef going in it. So into the other kitchen, and we'll see you in a little while. Now I'm going to make a pretty simple butter frosting for this cake. So I've got some butter into the bottom of this bowl, and I've got some brown sugar. And I'm just going to use my hand beater to whip these up. That's come together pretty nicely. So I'm going to add in just a little pinch of salt and some vanilla. And a little bit of whipping cream. And just continue beating that together. Now at this point, I'm just going to tip in a little bit of icing sugar and a little bit of icing sugar and a little bit of icing sugar until I sort of get to a point where I think the consistency is right. It should be somewhere around 2 cups worth of icing sugar. But that will be a little bit different for everybody, depending on where you are and what brand of icing sugar you use and how finely it's ground and how much starch is put in your icing sugar to keep it from clumping. So those numbers are always sort of just a best guess. It will vary, which is why I just sort of tip it in until I get to the right spot. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the kitchen. I've got a bunch of stuff going on. So we're going to put some icing on this cake. And you know, you put the icing on. And that's all you have to do, is just get it on there. Julie will be home soon. We're going to have some stew or some braised beef, braised pepper beef, I guess, on some Roman semolina gnocchi. And then we'll have this cake afterwards. That's a good looking cake.
Hey, Glenn. Hey, friends. Hey, you're studying that. That's a good looking piece of cake.
It is a good looking piece of cake. I'm liking what this cake looks like. So it's golden brown.
Yes.
It has a very caramely tone. I'm hoping that, you know, some of those flavors carry through. The frosting or the icing is
somehow my icing didn't come with it. What's with that?
That's really good. Sweet potato.
Okay. Like, it tastes sweet like a carrot, but not quite a carrot.
I forgot about carrots. So, pumpkin.
Are there carrots in it?
No, there
okay.
isn't. But pumpkin, cooked sweet potato like I used here, or cooked carrot. You could easily put a cup of cooked carrot in this and come out to the same thing.
Totally trying icing.
but the whole thing goes together really well.
That's like a brown sugar icing. Okay. I couldn't quite pin it down with the cake underneath. But that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And pecans?
Pecans. Yeah. I bought that bag of pecans. I took out the second mortgage to buy the bag of pecans.
We're gonna use
I'm
it
going
in
to use
everything.
them. I'm going to use them.
And it's going to show up regularly.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is a really good fall cake.
Oh, nice cake.
It's a good summer cake.
I like that cake.
Winter cake, spring cake.
It's cake.
It's cake.
I'm not going to be picky. It's cake.
Anytime you need a cake, that would be really good. So, could be pumpkin, could be sweet potato, could be carrot. Let me know which one you're going to do. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.